Have you ever poured your heart into caring for someone, only to realize that doing what you thought was right was slowly breaking you? Many women in midlife are part of an invisible army of caregivers. We are daughters, we are wives, daughter-in-laws, mothers, partners. We put our plans on hold because someone we love needs us. We step up because we care, because we feel responsible, and sometimes because everyone quietly assumes that we will. But what happens when stepping up requires you to disappear? What happens when caregiving begins to affect your health, your freedom, your marriage, and your sense of self? And what happens when the person you are caring for begins directing anger and hurtful words towards you? Today, I'm sharing a very personal part of my caregiving journey. This is not about blaming or shaming anyone. Aging, illness, grief, fear, and cognitive changes can create extremely complicated situations. This is about what happened to me. It's about caregiver burnout, family pressure, verbal mistreatment, and the moment I realized that compassion for someone else could no longer mean abandoning myself. My caregiving journey began in January of last year. My father-in-law had passed away the previous December, and my husband and I were concerned about our mother-in-law living alone. We decided that she would spend weekends with us. Shortly afterwards, several difficult situations began happening. In late February, she fell in her home and could not get back up. She remained on the floor for approximately 4 to 5 hours before my husband drove over to her house to check on her because she wasn't answering her phone. He found her injured and immediately called the ambulance. She spent about a week in the hospital. During that time, a physiotherapist explained that her balance was extremely poor and that she would need to use a walker going forward. I spent several days at the hospital with her because I did not want her to feel alone. But it also became clear to us that she could no longer safely live by herself. So as a family, we decided that she would move into our home. At first, everything felt manageable. I was determined to do a good job. I began researching and learning everything I could about her medical condition. Because my husband was working, it was decided that I would take responsibility for her daily care. And when I say daily care, I mean nearly every part of her day. Showering, I helped her manage her incontinence care, changed her pull-ups, helped her get dressed, prepared her meal, helped her move around the house and navigate the many stairs that we had in our cottage. I handled laundry, cleaning, appointments, medication, and the normal responsibilities of running a household. I also realized I could not leave the house unless someone else was available to stay with her. At that time, I told myself, this is what family does. And it's what families often do. But I did not yet understand how quickly caregiving could consume my entire life. By late June, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and I were helping clean up my mother-in-law's home so that it could be sold. The home had been in disrepair. There were a lot of issues and required a great deal of cleaning and clearing that needed to be done. We worked hard for about 3 days and the home sold within a week. We were very grateful for that. At the same time, I was packing out our own house because we were moving in July. We chose a bungalow because we believed that it would be safer and easier for my mother-in-law. We hoped that removing the stairs would reduce some of the risk. So while providing full-time care, I was also helping clean one house, preparing another house for sale, packing our home, and getting ready for a move. I kept going, but my body was keeping track of everything I was ignoring. After we moved, the falls started to happen again. My mother-in-law decided that since there were no stairs, she was going to use her cane to get around the house instead of her walker. She later fell in the bathroom. There were also episodes of confusion, severe stomach problems, and several difficult bathroom incidents. Eventually, I brought her to the hospital and explained everything that had been happening to the nurse. My mother-in-law, who was sitting right next to me, became extremely angry with me and started yelling. She believed that I was suggesting that she had lost her mind, and that was not what I was trying to do. I was trying to give the medical team enough information to understand what was happening and to keep her safe. The hospital wait was long that night, I remember, and all she kept talking about, she wanted to leave, she did not belong there. I asked her to wait one more hour, and fortunately she was called within that hour. She remained in the hospital for nearly a week because she had an infection and needed to adjust her meds and needed to be monitored. During that week, I thought I would rest while she was in the hospital, that my own body finally said enough. I became extremely sick. It was more than an ordinary tiredness. Never felt like that before. It was the kind of exhaustion that reaches into your body, your emotions, and your ability to think clearly. I realized I was approaching serious caregiver burnout. And I finally admitted something I had resisted admitting. I could not continue doing this alone. So I contacted social services to request support. But like I'm sure, like in everyone else's community, there was a backlog. And so while I waited, I continued providing the care. That summer, I also remember suggesting to get a wheelchair so that we could take my mother-in-law out to the store, a little bit more safely than using her cane. She did not believe she needed one and initially refused. Eventually, I told my husband that we would purchase one because taking her out was becoming increasingly difficult. This is one of the painful realities of caregiving. Sometimes you can clearly see that help is needed, but the person receiving the care may not agree. They may feel that accepting help means losing their freedom. They may feel embarrassed. They may be afraid of losing control. You can understand those feelings and still recognize that the current situation is no longer sustainable. Late that year, the social services finally approved that they would cover 23 hours of care. A friend of mine runs a caregiving service, so I contacted her and arranged for caregivers to come into our home. Because we chose to utilize an agency for safety reasons, there was an additional amount that needed to be paid. We arranged care approximately 4 days a week and utilized 3 to 4 hours at a time. For the first time in months, I could see the possibility of having a few hours to breathe, a few hours just to leave the house, walk my dog, a few hours when I was not solely responsible for another adult's immediate needs. But after the first week, my mother-in-law asked about the cost. She inquired about it, and she did not like the amount and wanted to reduce the care to approximately maybe a couple of hours, 2 days a week. My husband wanted to keep her happy, and I could sense that he was beginning to lean towards reducing them. And that was the moment I drew my first line. I said, there's no way we're going back to how things were. It had taken months to get support. It had taken months for everyone to understand that I needed help. My health had already paid a price, and I was not willing to return to providing around-the-clock care with almost no relief. My mother-in-law was surprised. From her perspective, she did not believe that caring for her had created such a heavy burden. She did not believe that she needed any real care. Soon, shortly afterwards in that conversation, she started calling me a wolf in sheep's clothing. Never heard that before. Those words really hurt. But they also revealed something important. The moment I stopped silently carrying everything, I was no longer seen in the same way. Over time, other conflicts followed. Not too long ago, I decided just to rearrange the house. So I changed the dining area, and that meant she sat in a different place. She did not like to change. That night, she refused to eat her dinner and told me that I thought I was the boss of everybody. I also became aware that she had been speaking negatively to me about me during phone conversations to family and friends. When I confronted the situation, she called me a liar. The breaking point happened more recently over breakfast. I prepared a meal for her, but she decided that I don't want this. I want oatmeal instead. And I explained I would happily make the oatmeal the following morning, but I did not want the food that I had already prepared to go to waste. And she also had to get ready for an appointment that time, so our time was limited that morning. She refused to eat, and she also refused to take her medication. I decided I was going to make the conversation went back and forth until she called me an evil witch. She told me that I was a sick one. She told me that I was the one with dementia. And I decided I'm just going to make the oatmeal. And there was a time when I would have continued arguing. I would have tried to prove that I was a good person. I would have explained everything I had done for her. I might have cried over how unfair it felt to give so much of myself and then to be spoken that way. But something in me had changed. I looked at her and I said, God bless you. I wish nothing but health for you and nothing but the best for you. And then I ended the conversation, even though she kept uttering negative things towards me. That night I spoke to my husband and I told him that his mother needed more professional care. I was stepping back from being her primary caregiver. I could continue caring about her. I could continue wanting her to be safe and healthy, but I would no longer accept ongoing verbal mistreatment at the price of being a good daughter-in-law. This is what I want every caregiver to understand. Giving someone care does not mean giving them unlimited access to your health, to your time, your energy, and even your dignity. A boundary is not punishment. A boundary is not revenge. It's also not abandonment. A boundary is a clear statement about what you can and cannot continue doing. And sometimes the most loving decision is admitting that one family member can no longer safely or sustainably provide all the care. Professional care is still care. Respite care is still care. Asking siblings to participate is still care. Looking into community services is still care. Choosing not to be destroyed by caregiving does not mean that you do not love the person. Here are 4 shifts that have helped me begin reclaiming my peace. Shift number 1. Stop measuring your love by how much you can endure. Many women have been taught that love means sacrifice. But when sacrifice becomes complete self-erasure, something has gone wrong. Your worth as a caregiver is not measured by how exhausted you are. It is not measured by how many insults you can absorb. It is not measured by whether you can handle every responsibility without asking for help. You could still love someone and still say, I cannot continue like this. Shift number 2. Move from family conflict to shared responsibility. When you're caring for an in-law, the situation can become especially complicated. Your spouse may feel torn between protecting you and trying to keep their parent happy. That tension can easily turn into conflict between the two of you. The conversation I needed to have with my husband was not choose me or your mother. Definitely not. It was, we need a care plan that does not destroy my health or our relationship. Stepping back from daily care does not mean stepping away from your marriage or family. It just means the responsibility must be redistributed. The caregiving plan cannot depend on one person silently carrying everything. Shift 3. Practice compassionate detachment. I'm not going to pretend that the words did not hurt me. They did, trust me. When someone you have cared for calls you cruel names, it can cut deeply. But aging, grief, fear, pain, infection, medication changes, cognitive changes can all affect a person's emotions and behaviors. Understanding that possibility can help you avoid taking every word as a true reflection of who you are. But understanding the behavior does not mean you must remain in the room and absorb it. You can say, I will speak with you when we can speak respectfully. I'm going to step away now. I care about you, but I will not continue this conversation while I'm being insulted. Compassion and boundaries can exist together. Shift 4. Do not carry caregiving in silence. Caregiving can be incredibly isolating. You may feel embarrassed to admit that you're struggling. You may worry that people will judge you. You may believe that because you agreed to help, you no longer have the right to say that's too much. But silence makes burnout heavier. Speak to your spouse. Contact local services for help. Talk to a trusted friend. Look for caregiver support groups. Ask other family members to participate in specific ways. And when medications are being refused, falls are increasing, confusion appears, or their behavior just changes suddenly, document what is happening and speak to the appropriate healthcare professional. You do not have to diagnose the situation yourself. You do not have to solve every problem alone. Here's the truth I'm learning. You're allowed to be a compassionate person without becoming a depleted person. You're allowed to care without disappearing. You're allowed to ask for help before your body forces you to stop. And you're allowed to step back when a role begins costing you your health, dignity, and your peace. I'm still walking through this transition. I do not have every answer, but I now know that choosing peace does not make me selfish. It means I'm finally including myself among the people who deserve care. If this story resonated with you, share in the comments what part of caregiving has been most difficult for you. Have you struggled with guilt, burnout, family pressure, or setting boundaries with someone you love? Also, please remember to like this video, subscribe to Reclaim and Rise, and share it with another woman who may need permission to protect her peace. Until next time, keep rising, and remember, you do not have to shrink to prove that you care.